एवरीवन, मैं वंदना आपका यूपीएससी टाइम में स्वागत करती हूँ। आज की वीडियो में हम एनसीईआरटी हिस्ट्री का चैप्टर 4 देखने वाले हैं, विच इज द मेकिंग ऑफ द ग्लोबल वर्ल्ड. इट विल बी अ लेक्चर फर्स्ट ऑफ दिस चैप्टर. नाउ स्टार्ट द चैप्टर. In this chapter, we will study about the condition of the poor and the rich during the World War and many things. Now start the chapter. All these affect the lives of poor. They fail to pay their rents, become deeply indebted, and were forced to migrate in search of work. The main destination of Indian independent migrant were the Caribbean island, mainly Trinidad, Guyana, Suriname, Mauritius, and the Fiji. Tamil migrants went to the Ceylon, Malaya. Indentured workers were also recruited for tea plantation in Assam. Recruitment was done by agents engaged by employers and paid a small commission. Many migrants agreed to take up work, hoping to escape poverty or oppression in their home villages. Often migrants were not even told that they were to embark on long sea voyages. Sometimes agents were even forcibly abducted less willing migrant. 19th century endured was being described as a new system of slavery. On arrival at the plantation, labor found the condition to be different from that had imagined. Living and working conditions were harsh and were few legal rights, but workers discovered their own ways of surviving. Many of them escaped into the wild, though if catch they faced severe punishment. Similarly, the protest religion of the Rastafarianism, made famous by the Jamaican reggae star Bob Marley, is also said to reflect social and cultural link with the Indian migrant to Caribbean. Chutney music, popular in Trinidad and Guyana, is another creative contemporary expression of post-endured experience. These forms of culture fusion are a part of making of global world where things from different places get mixed, lose their original character and become something entirely new. Most endured workers stayed on after their contracts ended or returned to their new home after a short spell in India. Indian entrepreneur Indian entrepreneur abroad. The Shikari Puri Shof and the Nottu Kochai Chettar were amongst the most group of banker and trader who finance export agriculture in Central and South Asia. They use either their own funds or those borrowed from a European bank. They had a sophisticated system to transfer money over a large distance and even develop indigenous form of a corporate organization. India trader and money lender also followed European colonizer into Africa. Hyderabadi Sindhi trader ventured beyond European colonies. From the 1860s, they established flourishing empowerment busy ports while selling local and import curious to tourists. Indian trade, colonialism, and the global system. Historically, fine cotton produced in India were exported to Europe. With the industrialization, British cotton manufacture began to expand, and industrialists pressurized the government to restrict cotton import and protect local industry. Tariffs were imposed on a cloth import into the Britain, thus the inflow of fine Indian cotton began to decline. From the early 19th century, British manufacturers also began to seek overseas market for their clothes. Excluded from British market by tariff barrier, Indian textile now face still competition in other international markets. The exports of cotton textiles from Indian declined from 30% around 1800 to 15% by 1815. By the 1870s, this proportion had dropped to below 3%. While exports of manufacture declined rapidly, export of a raw material increased equally fast between 1812 and 1871. The share of raw cotton export rose from 5% to the 35%. Indigo used for dyeing cloth was another important export for many decades. Opium shipment to China grew rapidly from the 1820 to become for a while Indian single largest export. Britain grew opium in India and exported it to China, and with the money earned, though this sale it financed its tea and other import from the China. Food grains and raw material exports from India to Britain and the rest of the world increased. The value of British export to India was much higher than the value of British import from the India. Thus, Britain had a trade surplus with the India. Britain used this surplus to balance its trade deficits with other countries with countries from which Britain was importing more than it was selling to tea. This is how a multilateral settlement system works. It allows the country's deficit with another country to be settled by its surplus with a third country. By helping Britain balance its deficits, India played a crucial role in the late 19th century world economy. Britain's trade surplus in India also helped pay the so-called home charges that include private remittance home by British official and trader interest payments on Indian external debt and pension of British official in India. Trade surplus. The value of British export to India was much higher than the value of British import from India. Thus, Britain had a trade surplus with India. Britain used their surplus to balance its trade deficit with other countries that it with no countries from which Britain was importing more than it was selling to tea. This is how multilateral settlement system work. It allow one country deficient with another country to be settled by its surplus with the third country. By helping Britain balance deficits, India played a crucial role in the late 19th century world economy. Britain trade surplus in India also helped pay the so-called home charges that include private remittance home by British official and trader, invest payment on Indian external debt and pension of a British official in India. The First World War was mainly fought in Europe. During this period, the world experienced widespread economic and political instability and another catastrophic war. The First World War was fought between the two power blocs, the Alliance, Britain, France and Russia, later joined by the US, and on the opposite side were the Central Power Germany, Austria, Hungary and the Ottoman Turkey. The war began in August 1914 and lasted more than 4 years. This war was the first modern industrial war as it saw the use of machine guns, tanks, aircraft, chemical weapons, etc. on a massive scale. These were all increasingly products of a modern large-scale industry. The scale of death and the destruction, 9 million dead and 20 million injured, was unthinkable before the industrial age without the use of industrial arms. Most of the killed and maimed were men of working age. These death and injury reduced the able-bodied workforce in Europe, with a fewer number within the family. Household income declined after war. During the war, industries were restricted to produce war related goods. Entire society were recognized for the war. As men went to battle, women stepped in the undertaken jobs, and earlier only the men were expected to do. The war led to the shaping of economic links between some of the world's largest economic power, which were now fighting each other to pay for them. Britain borrowed large sums of money from US bankers as well the US public. Thus the war transformed the US from being an international debater to an international creditor. At the war end, the US and its citizens owned more overseas assets than a foreign government and citizen owned in the US. Britain, which was a world leading economy in a pre-war period, faced a prolonged crisis. While Britain was preoccupied with the war, industry had developed in India and Japan. After the war, Britain found it difficult to recapture its earlier position of dominance in the India market and to compete with the Japan internationally. In order to finance wars expenditure, Britain had borrowed liberally from the US, which meant that at the end of the war, Britain was a burden with a huge external debt. The war had led to the economic boom, increase in the demand, production of employment. At the same time, the government reduced bloated war expenditure to bring them into the line with the peacetime revenues. All these led to huge job loss. In 1921, one in every five British workers were out of work. Anxiety and uncertainty about work become an enduring part of the post-war scenario. Many agriculture economic were also in a crisis. Consider the case of wheat producer. Before the war, Eastern Europe was a major supplier of the wheat in a world market. When this supply was disrupted during the war, wheat production in Canada, America, and Australia expanded dramatically. But once the war was over, production in Eastern Europe revived and created a glut in a wheat output. Grain price fell, rural income declined, and the farmer fell deeper into the debt. In the US, economic recovery was quicker. After a short period of economic trouble in a year after the war, the US economy resumed its strong growth in early 1920s. One important feature of US economy of 1920 was mass production. The move toward mass production had begun in the late 19th century. In the 1920s, become a characteristic feature of industrial production in a US. With this slide, we stop this video at here. In the next video, we will discuss about its second part. And if you like this video, then hit the like button. If you are new in this channel, then press the subscriber button, and also share this video to your friends so that they all also stay tuned with this chapter series. Thanks for watching the video. And if one more thing, if you have a query related to this subject and related to this chapter, then you can ask in a comment box. Thanks for watching the video.